Oh, I'm Reverend Charles Ausherman, member of Bath Church here, and we're very happy to be here on behalf of the Global Ties Akron and their global education program, emphasizing the diversity of faith in Northeast Ohio. And with me is our associate pastor for youth in this congregation. I hope that what we have to say will be useful to those who are not familiar with Bath Church or the United Church of Christ to which we belong. But there's a great history even to this congregation here. And maybe, Adam, you want to mention how we moved here on a wagon almost.
Yes, yeah, quite literally. I'm Reverend Adam Marquette. I work with the youth and families here at Bath Church. We'd like to share with you just a bit of the history of this church. In about 1818, a community gathered here in Bath Township started this church not too far from this spot here in Akron, Ohio, where we're located now. And a few decades later, they decided to move that church down the street a little bit on horseback, or on a wagon dragged by horses, and up. It was down in a valley, and so they moved it up the hill a little bit because it was so muddy that the wagons and horses were having trouble getting to the church. So they made it more accessible in that way. And then in 1940s, they moved that church again to the current spot where it sits. And we consider that now our historic chapel. Where we are sitting at this moment is our new to us sanctuary, built in 2004, so we are about 12 years old now in this spot, but still growing into this big worship space. Somewhere in the 1950s, two denominations, the Evangelical Reformed and the Congregationalists, started to have conversations about joining their churches together within the Christian tradition, within the Protestant tradition, within the Christian tradition. There are a number of denominations, a number of church groups that make up our large body of Christ. And these two denominations decided to merge together in 1958 and form the United Church of Christ. And not too long after that, our church decided to merge with them as an individual church, and which brings us to this day. So we are now the Bath Church, United Church of Christ, a member of this denomination, which continues to grow. Every church within our denomination is an autonomous body. That means it operates on its own, but we are in covenant with each other. That means we put forth respectful dialogue. We try to work together. We join together in worshiping and celebrating the things that we have in common, but then have respectful dialogue about the things that differ between all of us. A unique situation, I feel, as far as the denominations go. But we have wonderful local and national organizations, but also a broader outlook as far as denomination, which, Chuck, I think you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful that we not only have very active local congregations worshiping every week and with a lot of other activities and youth as well as older folks in the community, but we're connected with the National Council of Churches, which is once again a representative body of representatives from our United Church of Christ are on the board of the National Council of Churches, which is located in New York City, and we try to foster what we call ecumenical dialogue, because the interesting thing about well, here in America, we have all these different cultural or subcultural groups which may differ in terms of worship practices and so forth, but we're trying to show a unity through the National Council of Churches in spite of our different subcultures and the denominations having unique histories, bringing them together in a forum where we can have dialogue and joint activities. They have the General Assembly every year where all these different representatives get together in a large arena and then celebrate our common faith as Christians. And then on top of that, the National Council of Churches then is a member of the World Council of Churches in Geneva, Switzerland. and Geneva being a great international city where UN agencies, such as the World Health Organization and so forth, are right down the street from the World Council of Churches, so that we have a voice then in the global church. Now this is Protestant and Orthodox, and also with communication with the Roman Catholic Church in Rome, in the Vatican. You'd be surprised at how easy the conversations are conducted between all of these vast cultural differences. Now you think of the Russian Orthodox Church and the Greek Orthodox Church, and then the Protestant Baptist Church, for instance, in America. You say, well, how could they as people ever really get together and communicate across these great cultural diversity? And yet it is very exciting when you attend some of these meetings, as I've had the opportunity to do so as an international missionary type person, so that there they get together and they have the communion with the bread and the wine, and which are the symbols of our communion together around the Lord's table, even in spite of the fact that we don't even understand each other's languages, perhaps. And so we have, it's like the United Nations in New York, you have translators translating what's going on, so people with their earphones can be a part of these great forums. So what I'm trying to emphasize is that while we have a strong local presence right here in Bath, in Akron, that we can reach out nationally to our brothers and sisters in the faith across the nation and across the world. And we're talking about, over 1 billion believers through the World Council of Churches. And then on top of that, the World Council of Churches is in communion with other faiths. And so there's dialogue with Islamic and other religious groups, of course, the Jewish faith. And you would be surprised once again how conversation can flow, I would say rather successfully, between these different faith traditions. And that's part of the purpose of the World Council of Churches, the world body and the national body, because as we get into discussions about world peace, for example, which is, affects all of us, regardless of our faith or lack of faith, whatever, that we want to address our concerns as people of faith to these global issues, global warming, world peace, and communication in an ever-shrinking world. How can we get along? It's unfortunate that some people outside of the faith traditions, they say, oh, religion, they're always fighting. Well, that's not true. It's not true. We have our differences, but we do sit down and discuss major issues together and come into some form of agreement, and then hopefully impact the political scene in terms of United Nations or even individual countries. Right now we're very concerned about the tragedy in Syria, and here we have Christians being persecuted over there and other faith groups being persecuted for their faith. These are part of our family, and we can't ignore their problems in that particular situation. That's just an illustration of how we need to and can impact these problems as people of faith.
And this all comes back really to the local church. Our church is one of many churches within the United Church of Christ denomination, and whether it's internationally or nationally or just within our small communities, as a denomination, as a local church, we strive to take that united Church of Christ very literally. It all boils down to a prayer that Jesus had, praying to God that they may all be one. And that is our effort, that we may all be one. Cool. All right?